that unless you have a family member serving in uniform, and most people don't, you don't know where this military is, you don't know what it's like, and you really don't have much say in the way it's used. President Bush exploits that after 9/11. He decides he knows how it wants to be used. And of course, for the first time in our history, when we go to war, instead of a president turning to the Congress and turning to the country and say, we're going to have to change the way we do business because we're at war, President Bush actually says, go to Disney World, go shopping, go back to doing what you have been doing for the last 10 years, and I'll take care of everything. And I have to say, the great majority of the American people, I don't think listeners of your show or viewers of your show, but the great majority of the American people basically did what Bush said and tuned the war out and allowed the burden to fall on a very small percentage of the population, which I find, frankly, morally objectionable.
Who benefits, Andrew Bacevich?
From the war? There are obviously corporations, contractors who benefit, and I would never want to dismiss that, but I don't really think that provides us an adequate explanation of how we got into this fix. I think who really benefits or what really benefits is the political status quo. The national security state, the apparatus of the national security state, benefits. It's gotten larger since 9/11, immensely larger. The tacit bargain between our political leaders and the American people, which basically assumes that our culture of consumption, our refusal to save, our addiction to oil, as President Bush himself described it, that all of these things can be sustained indefinitely if we can simply employ our military power in ways to shape the world to our liking. Now, of course, what we found over the past 5-6 years is our military power is really not nearly as great as many people imagined it to be back in the 1990s, and war has not become an effective instrument of politics as many people imagined back in the 1990s.
You talk about the massive amounts of money that go into the military, and yet it can be stopped by an IED.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, the military's self-image, or the image of the military that many national security experts had developed during the 1990s, was that because our military was so adept at exploiting information technology, that in every respect we were faster than any prospective opponent. We could think faster, we could decide faster, we could see faster, we could use our weapons faster. One of the great ironies, I think, of the Iraq War is that our adversary, who in a technological sense we would say has been fairly primitive, our adversary has actually acted much more quickly than we have. In the competition between the improvised explosive devices as a major weapon system that they have used, and our efforts to defeat that system, they have repeatedly acted more quickly than we have. And there's an important lesson there, I think. And the lesson is technology is not all it's cracked up to be when it comes to military affairs.
The first meeting of Barack Obama and McCain was with an evangelical reverend, Rick Warren, in California, and they talked about evil and good, and McCain said he will go to the gates of hell and back to get Osama bin Laden. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm a conservative, and this is another one of those things that leads me to believe that not only is President Bush not a conservative, but Senator McCain is not either. Of course there is evil in the world, and there is good in the world. But guess what? Some of the evil is right here. I mean, to view international politics through this lens of good and evil leads you to vastly oversimplify, and I think also leads you to make reckless decisions. I do believe President Bush genuinely, not cynically, genuinely saw Saddam Hussein as evil. And I think he actually genuinely believed that, again, consistent with this notion of American exceptionalism, that we were called upon to bring democracy to Iraq. But what a ludicrous way to view U.S.-Iraqi relations over the past 20 or 30 years. Because if you really look at U.S.-Iraqi relations or U.S. policy in the Middle East over the last 20, 30, 50, 60 years, it's impossible to see the question as simply one of good versus evil. It's not black and white, it's gray. And you need to see the world as gray if you're going to be a sensible statesman.
Where do you see all this heading? Your last chapter is the limits of power. Why don't people on the ground, overwhelmingly opposed to the war, have a say now?
Well, I think we have. Again, I don't mean to make this as a statement that applies to 100% of the American people, but I think the great majority of us basically have allowed ourselves to become seduced by this culture of consumption, of not taking seriously the notion that someday the bills come due, that you can't simply run up a line of credit that stretches from here to infinity. We don't want to look ourselves in the mirror. We don't want to recognize the need to make some changes in the way we live.
Do you see the end of American empire?
Yes, I do. And I think the key question is, will the American empire end catastrophically because of our blind insistence that we will not change? Or will we be able to disengage ourselves from and dismantle the American empire in a sensible, reasonable way that will do the least damage to the world and the least damage to ourselves?
Andrew Bacevich, I want to thank you very much for being with us. His book is The Limits of Power, The End of American Exceptionalism. If you'd like a copy of today's show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Well, Democracy Now! Is expanding to 2 hours daily for the next 2 weeks, beginning August 25th at the Democratic and Republican conventions, to bring you our special coverage, Breaking with Convention, War, Peace, and the Presidency. That's right. We'll be broadcasting from Denver and St. Paul to cover the 2008 conventions, from the streets to the suites to the convention floor. That's August 25th through September 5th, 2-hour daily broadcasts. Make sure to tune in for the kind of coverage you'll only get here on Democracy Now! And you can also watch or listen at democracynow.org. You can call your stations, go to your local listings to find out when they'll be broadcasting the show. Democracy Now! Is also looking to hire a full-time systems administrator, an IT person with extensive Linux experience to maintain and support our website and internal networks and database systems. You can email all applications to job@democracynow.org. And we're looking for some housing in Denver and St. Paul for the conventions, and so you can write to convention@democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Sharif Abdel-Kadus, Aaron Mate, Angelique Comet, Jeffrey Hagerman, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, and Peter Curry is our engineer. Special thanks also to Becca Staley, Angie Kiefer, Samantha Chambly, Jay Salnor, and John Randolph, Jose Miranda, Kieran Cook Meadows, Vesta Godars, Rabia Al-Ghani. Our website, again, is democracynow.org. You can read the transcript of the entire show. You can watch and listen to the podcast. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.